on a tiny rock in the middle of the Pacific Ocean called Lanyu Island. This is a windswept, barren, rocky outcrop, and the nearest landmass is 100 kilometers away. It was Taiwan. And this place is so stormy and so wild, and it gets beaten by tornadoes so ferociously that the local people, the Yami people who live there, actually live underground in tunnels. So I was underground. I was in a tunnel, in a dank, dark, claustrophobic tunnel with one of the elders called Chapen Matenan. And Chapen Matenan is staring at me in this tunnel, and suddenly he opens up his homespun jerkin, and from a scabbard he pulls out a dagger and lunges at me, stabbing with the dagger. And so I throw myself back, absolutely petrified, thinking this man is going to kill me. And suddenly he bursts out laughing. And I look at him and he stares at me, and I suddenly realize I have completely misunderstood this man. But he's smiling at me. He clearly doesn't mean me harm. He wants to communicate with me. So Chapen Matenan is part of the Yami people, who are a seafaring people. They're a Polynesian tribe, the same linked to the people of Hawaii and Samoa and even the Maori. So at one time, this Polynesian tribe actually roamed the entire southern hemisphere, from New Zealand to South America. And his granddaughter was there, and she had a bit of English, Shonala, and she says to me, no, he doesn't want to hurt you. And suddenly, Chapen Matenan begins to sing. He breaks out into song, a traditional song of the Yami people. In fact, part of the creation myth of the Yami people. And the weirdest thing happens because I recognize some element in the song. Like I'm in this tiny claustrophobic tunnel, and he's singing, and I know it. And what I recognize is a song that I had heard in the 70s when I was growing up from a woman called Courtney Cahan. And Courtney Cahan was born on the Blasket Islands, and then she moved to a tiny cottage on the Dingle Peninsula, and I used to spend my afternoons with her in the 70s. And she would sing me songs and tell me stories from our own mythology, from our own creation myths. And Chapen Matenan suddenly stopped singing, and he got Shonala to translate something for me, something he wanted to say. And he said that his island is surrounded by ocean, by the sea. And it is connected to all the other islands and all the other land masses in the south, and all his people are connected. And so me, who lives far, far away from him, is also surrounded by sea. And he said, just in the same way that he has his own mythology, his own stories, that link to all his people in the southern hemisphere. But he knew I too had my own mythology, my own creation myth. And he decided that if he sang one of his songs, we could communicate beyond all of the barrier of time, all the barrier of space, all the barrier of language. And I was just bowled over. I had to get out of that tunnel. That suddenly this simple man was so connected first to every rock, every stone, every wave, every cliff in his locality, but also way back into the times of history. And of course, so too were we, so too are we. Like, the Irish were a great seafaring people. We came to this island, as has been so well explained, and we were immediately constantly moving. We were coastal and riverine, and we were connected with all of the people in what is now Scotland and Wales and England and the Faroes and Iceland, and down through France and Spain and North Africa. We were coastal, seafaring people, constantly communicating. And we were this for so long, for eons, until a miraculous thing happened. In the 5th century, a few monks came and brought Christianity. Now, not official Christianity. We were lucky. We did not get the official Church of Rome. We got some weird, isolated, hermetic, marginal understanding of Christianity, which came actually from Egypt, from the Desert Fathers, from St. Anthony and the likes. And so it was a Christianity that was a lot more open in these oddball, hobbit-like missionaries and monks and hermits who came. And they were connected, and they were interested in the beliefs they found here, the Druidic pagan beliefs, the beliefs in animism, in a spirit animating every rock, every person, every thing, every thought. And in multiple realities, in shifting dimensions. And in the fact that dreams can be more real than reality. which we see in the books from the Celtic Taravesh, the belief, the prophetic sense of dreams. So they brought this to us, and we took it on. They mixed our Christianity, their Christianity, with our traditional Druidic beliefs and created something new. But we were a marginal group still on the very edges of Europe. And that was why they came, because we were finibus terra, the end of the earth, which Jesus had said, once his message reached finibus terra, his work will be done. So we were the very margins. And then the weirdest thing happened. So they brought their message, and they brought a tool by which to spread the message, which was writing. And the tool worked for them. They managed to spread their message very quickly on this island. But the tool worked for us too, because as Cillian has said, they recorded the ancient lore and wisdom and creation myth of our people that was on the island as well, in books which we have now today. But as I say, they came in the 5th century, and then a freak thing happened. Suddenly, the center point, Europe, collapsed with the end of the Roman Empire and the arrival in of the dark hordes of the Visigoths, of the Vandals, of the Franks, of the Saxons, of the Huns. The old order was destroyed. The old civilization, the old philosophy, the old culture, the old society, and particularly the old Christianity. And the dark ages came into Europe. And then we, us isolated, hobbity, weird, eccentric, spiritually promiscuous, nature-worshipping Christians went back. We had Finbar went to Italy, St. Cillian went to Würzburg, we had Colman, and we had Fergal going to Salzburg and Italy. And we came back and we brought our understanding of Christianity, our as I say, our nature-rooted understanding of Christianity back to Europe. We were lighthouse keepers for a while. We shone. And that potential, is always open to us again. And in fact, it's what we're still doing. When Noreen Ní Rian or when Seamus Heaney goes to Shanghai, or even Colin Dunn goes to Moscow, or Caoimhin O'Reilly goes to New York, they are bringing an element of this outsider, isolated, nature-rooted spirituality, this odd hobbit hermit-like understanding to the world. And we can still find this as I say, this spiritually rooted, marginal understanding in our own language. What's fascinating is our language. People often say, you cannot be an agnostic and speak Irish because you've all this Jesus and God in every sentence. Lecún of day, buechas le dia, dia rot. But that's not from Christianity. That is from animism. That is from this belief that you will find in all indigenous societies around the world, that they believe there is a spirit, a life force, an animating God in every single thing. And that still exists in our language. Now, we've had 3 different people talk about Abergain's poem. We've had Noreen sing it beautifully. In other words, Abergain was the first poet, the first druid, who set foot in Ireland according to mythology, and he, of the Milesians, of the Gaels, and he summoned up Ireland with words. And his first sentence is, I am of the sea, it's Misha on Farige. And he's using the word Farige. So when Shapen Matenan and Shuanala and their people saw the sea, they had a word for it. When we saw the sea, we had a word for it, Farige. When we saw a stone, we called it Cloch. And those words that were written down in the 5th century, that were thousands of years old, are still being used today. They're still animating our consciousness. And what's weird, of course, we don't use Irish so much anymore. But as Cillian said, tá tead, cangelte, gach ein focal, geschnieven dierach sheer or ashkadi and shalnama. So there is like a thread connected to every single word, stretching right back to the beginnings of time. And what I find astounding is now we find it hard to talk, and particularly men find it hard to talk. And so, like any post-colonial traumatized people, we drink. And what do we say? What's the first word we say when we drink? We reach back to the Irish, but not only that, in the word we choose to reach, we reach back to say what we most want. We want health. We want sláinte. Gonna mean a man.